You're listening to Dodge Movie Podcast. Your hosts are Christy and Mike Dodge, the founders of Dodge Media Productions. We produce films and podcasts, so this is a podcast about films. Join them as they share their passion for filmmaking.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Dodge Movie Podcast. This is our third Oregon film, and I picked it partially because it fits our category of an indie film, low budget relative. But for the most part, I wanted to pick it because we loved this movie when we first saw it. And then, unfortunately, the town of Pheonix, Oregon was destroyed in the 2020 fires. So a little bit of trivia. This is just fascinating to me when I saw it. Technically, this was the top of the U.S. domestic box office on its opening weekend. Can you believe that?
Yeah, because nothing else was playing.
Oh, you stepped on my... How dare you?
Well, do you want to cut that out and I'll not ball Brian you?
No, it's fine. So due to the lockdown for the pandemic, COVID-19, like there was another pandemic that people would be confused by, many cinemas were closed. And so the box office numbers were not collected if they even sent them at all. But this film had 2 screenings, and the totals for that weekend, it was number one. I don't know. I
think that's pretty cool trivia at a cocktail party right. That the filmmakers could say, hey, did you know we were number one in the box office?
Yeah.
When we came out, our opening weekend.
So it's an independent film, like I said. It was produced in 2018. It revolves around 2 characters who live in the city, Pheonix, Oregon, despite the film being shot in Klamath Falls for most of it. So like I said, in September of 2020, much of Pheonix, along with the neighboring towns of Talent, parts of Medford, and Ashland, were destroyed by the Alameda Drive fire. But like the city of Pheonix, it's rising from its ashes. And as I was doing some research, I discovered that just this past January 28th, the city of Pheonix held a groundbreaking ceremony at the Blue Heron Park to celebrate the beginning of replacing the playground equipment that was lost during the devastating fire. It's the city's website. It's like very right out of small town. It has a total population of like 4,500 people. It's ripe for an indie film with a cast, a smallish cast of oddballs kind of. The director is Gary Lundgren. It stars James Le Gros, Jesse Borrego, Lisa Edelstein, and Diedrich Bader. The producer is Gary's wife, Anne, another married couple, director-producer.
Maybe that's what Oregon breeds.
Like I said, it was filmed in Klamath Falls. Let's see. And it was produced by Ashland-based Joma Films, which is owned by the director, Gary.
So if Diedrich Bader was willing to work in this film, I wonder if he's open to other activity in the state of Oregon.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Like I said, it was a story of 2 longtime friends who battle a midlife crisis by opening up a bowling alley / pizzeria in their small hometown. So I think we're at the point of the podcast. Mike, can you kick us off with the pickup line?
Remember when you were a little kid and some adult told you to enjoy being young because you'd grow up fast and be old before you know it? That was the opening line.
It's kind of deep.
Yeah, a little bit depressing.
Right.
As a person who was old before he knew it.
And I believe it's a voiceover over these opening images. They're like drawn images.
Yeah, that's one of my questions throughout the film. This is the kind of thing where I maybe paused this time, but definitely the first time around, and asked Christy this question, which she has no way of knowing, but I just assume as a producer she knows everything. Did he do his own drawing? Did Le Gros do his own drawing? Or did they have an artist do it and then he just kind of penciled a little bit on top of the other guy's lines? Because you do see him drawing at some point.
Right. So we see these drawn images. We see some D&D dice, which gives us a little bit of color on the character. He's kind of reading Facebook. He lives in an Airstream. So, more color to who he is. Let's see. His name was Bobby. And then we see him. Oh, he goes out for a run and then he goes to work. And somebody says, this place is doomed, which once again, I thought told us a little bit about.
It told us about the film, but also it was a little eerie after watching it after the fires.
Right? Yeah. So Tanya's sitting at the bar and she is like a wine dealer. I don't know, like she goes from restaurant to restaurant selling
liquor distributor, maybe?
Yeah, maybe that's a good call for it.
Because she does wine and hard liquor, which is fascinating because I don't know if the OLCC lets other third parties sell hard liquor in the state.
Maybe she's a representative of the OLCC.
Let's hope.
You would hope, as being Oregonians, filmmakers, they would know that our state kind of tightly controls the alcohol.
Yeah, the director is an Oregonian, so I think he'd know.
Right. So we see that Tanya and Bobby are friends. They're kind of like, they've got some banter. You can't quite tell if there's like romance maybe there. There really isn't, because she makes it clear that she's seeing Mario. And you kind of get a sense that Bobby isn't super excited that she's seeing Mario.
As Harry said, men and women can never be friends.
Right, exactly. Well, I think he definitely has an eye for her. She doesn't really.
I give good credit to Le Gros for that, because that's subtly done. But yeah, you get the feeling that he's interested, and she's kind of playing the field.
Yeah. So at the end of his shift, he's pissed because his boss, played by Diedrich Bader, is pretty much like the worst boss. He's playing. He's Kyle. Pretty yucky boss to have.
There's a great line near the end of the film where Bobby says, "Kyle, you're a 1%er who used to steal money out of my tip jar." And Kyle says, 1%er, I'm broke. Which I think most restaurateurs would probably agree with.
Yeah, exactly. So at the end of his shift, to kind of get even for the tips that Kyle steals, he steals a bottle of scotch and heads home. And you can tell that he definitely had dreams of doing something else as he sits at home kind of working. Oh, he's going through, I believe it's almost like a portfolio where he's going through. He had his sights set on creating a graphic novel at some point.
It's got aliens in it. And also, we find out later on his ex-wife. So he's drawing her into this and apparently struggling to get over the divorce.
Mm-hmm. So his buddy Carlos asks him to meet him at a little coffee place, and he has the answer to all of their problems. He takes him to the bowling alley, and he tells Bobby that we're going to open up this bowling alley, and I am going to make some of the best pizza anybody has ever tasted. And he says, come up to my cousin's house this weekend so that we can try some pizza. And so he takes him up there, and Carlos making pizza is a very, in-depth process. He takes it very seriously. He makes his own dough. He makes his own sauce. He's talking about how he does all of this. And then he tells him that, because I think Bobby tries the pizza and it's delicious. And he says, okay, that's a great idea. I'm in, but where are we going to get the money? And so then that's when Carlos tells him, Mario has already invested the money. And Mario is the one that is dating Tanya. And so Bobby's a little nervous because he doesn't really dig Mario, but, it's kind of, my life sucks working for Kyle, so let's give it a go. So they both quit Kyle's restaurant. They head over to Mario's place called Bentley Capital that you said, obviously, I don't know if it was because it was a low budget movie or we were supposed to definitely get the idea that Mario was kind of more of a fly by night, but the office didn't look very professional.
I think that's actually when you're writing your script for your independent film, you want to make sure you put in anything where somebody has not been there very long because it's easier on the set dressers, right? So either maybe it's a con artist or maybe they just moved into the house or something like that. Find a way where there's a good excuse for not having anything in the room. Right.
It worked. And then they had to hire this character actor that I recognized. I don't remember his name. His character's name was Al. And he was just the sleaziest character. They had to hire him because he was the only guy who could repair the pin setter for the bowling alley because they were almost all broken because it's an old 1970s bowling alley, or maybe even before then.
Okay. Is there even one person in the state that fixes bowling alleys? It seems like a very small market.
Right. And so you felt like these guys were, what do they say, over a barrel because he was going to screw them over, but he's the only person who can fix the machines. And so they had to hire him and he was going to cost a lot of money. So it was just the odds were increasingly stacked against poor Carlos and Bobby, but they're going to give it a go. And so it's cute because he goes home and he starts drawing all these bowling themed pictures. And so he's getting really excited. And there's pictures with Tanya in them. And she kind of even comes and helps them clean up the place and paint. And they just, I feel like there was a montage, but I can't remember specifically. I didn't write it down.
Yeah.
Of them fixing up the bowling alley. But you're rooting for these guys. Like, you want them to succeed.
I did make a note of the fixing up the bowling alley montage.
Ah, okay. I figured there was. There was a montage where they like everybody who was helping with the repair were feasting on pizza and bowling in celebration. And then right after that, because I think Tanya calls, the money wasn't coming in and it wasn't coming in. And then Tanya gets a phone call and she says, Mario says that he deposited the check. And so they celebrate, and specifically Bobby and Tanya celebrate by going back to the Airstream.
Waka waka
Chicka
waka.
chicka bow wow.
Yeah.
And so they have sex, and in the morning they go back to, there was a cool shot that we liked. It's an extreme close-up of the coffee grounds from above. He has like a cone drip, and we see the coffee grounds, and she goes outside to talk on the phone, and we're all kind of like, this can't be good. And then he makes her another cup. So if you watch the movie, we both appreciated.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
As a filmmaker, those are the artistic shots that you want. Like, when you happen upon something like that, I just know every filmmaker I've ever worked with who kind of either has that idea beforehand and tries to pull it off, or when it happens and you're like, ooh, let's get a tight shot of the coffee as it's brewing. Like, you don't think of it so much maybe in the pre-production, but then you're on set and you're like, oh, this could be cool. It breaks up the monotony of a bunch of medium shots of people's heads and torsos. And so it just feels, I don't know. So that's why they stand out to us.
So it's boring if there's just two people like sitting in an elevator talking.
Right. Well, we had to throw some extra. That's the next episode. We're going to talk about, we had to throw some of those shots in, and we planned for it because you're going to need them. So anyway, stay tuned next week when we talk about making a movie in an elevator.
But speaking of cinematography, in particular independent films, I made a note here in the bowling action montage where there's a bowling competition. It looked like they put the dolly on the lane and pulled it backward as the person bowled and the ball came toward them. And I thought, well, on the one hand, that's really clever because the lane is already super flat, right? Somebody's already gone to the trouble of making it very flat and smooth. And so all you would really need to do was have your grip looking toward the pins and just, make sure that he didn't drag the dolly into the gutter.
Right.
But what a clever shot. And it was probably relatively simple to set up.
Yeah, I bet bowling alleys are kind of one of those things. I'm trying to think of another one that it's because you got all those leading lines.
Right.
You also can, there was one shot.
It's indoors. So you can control the lighting. There's no weather. Right? The floors are nice and flat. But
I'm thinking even every bowling movie you've ever seen has done where you're a few lanes over so you can be like perpendicular to then your character in the action. You can pan from left to right as the ball goes down,
Okay, that would be awesome. If I had like Elon Musk money, is to hire somebody to go put together what are the classic shots of bowling? Because there's probably some very common.
There's so many.
Right, so there's one where you're in with the pins, right? So you see the ball come and the pins go.
Oh, absolutely.
There's one where you're above the pins. There's the thing where you're right where the ball return is, so the ball pops up into frame.
I can't believe I can't remember this movie, but the dude.
Big Lebowski.
Yeah. Like, isn't there a ton of bowling in that one?
Yeah.
Because doesn't John Goodman have like a really weird ball?
Okay, no, horrible, but I have to admit I've only seen it the one time, but I think so.
Oh, wow. I think I've only seen it once or twice. One thing I noticed too with indie films while we're talking about cinematography, they tend to have a lot of medium and tight shots because then that's how you hide that you don't have like a ton of extras to fill out the, like big movies can hire extras and pay them each $100 for the day and food. And people, starving artists or starving actors will show up in droves. But when you're an indie film, you can only beg so many friends to show up for the day and kind of be the extras.
Okay, this is different films that I don't know that we've reviewed both of these yet, but I want to compare the opening scenes from La La Land, where you have 100 or more people all dressed in different things with cars doing a dance on a freeway that you've closed.
Right.
Versus Drop Dead Gorgeous, where Kristen Dunst is by herself with her headphones dancing on the side of a road.
Yeah.
Where you needed no extras. You didn't need to clear anything. You just stopped and filmed Kristen Dunst.
Yeah. That's a great scene. I love that scene. That's a great movie. So everybody's celebrating. They open the bowling alley. The first day is so fantastic that Carlos runs out of dough and he feels like a giant failure. But Bobby says, you guys, that's how good Carlos's pizza is you guys have bought all the pizzas. Show up tomorrow. And then somebody else, like a brother or a cousin, knows somebody who has a taco truck. And so they have that come over and that kind of saves the day. But they're feeling like they're on a high because they've opened up this bowling alley. Everybody loves it. Carlos is going to make more dough. Like, we're going to get this figured out. And then we find out that, because Al, the pin setter repairman, comes and says, hey, your check didn't clear. And we're like, what are you talking about? Mario deposited it. And that's when we discover that Mario has left town and the $900,000 that was in the account for all the investors is gone. And
but that was the money for the weed operation. So
I have written down $2 million gone. The weed investors are also out of their money.
Right. But the bowling alley was all their money, Carlos and Bobby, and they were promised extra money from Mario. But the investor money was, I thought, was for the weed operation, which raises the question from a plot perspective. That's why I'm bringing this up.
Yeah.
Is why did Mario bother? He already had a con where he's making money. Why screw over Bobby and Carlos at all? Now, I have a theory, but I was curious what you thought.
Okay. So what you're saying, because it's a bit confusing. So we were told that Tanya told us that Mario was getting together a bunch of investors to help with this weed co-op, and that's what the $2 million was for. And then he was willing to kind of put in some money for the pizza place. Mm-hmm. And you're saying, why would Mario do that? Because that's so small potatoes, especially when he's got this $2 million weed deal. And so the only thing I can think of is the motivation for some guys was it to get Tanya? Was it to make...
That was my theory that I was going to advance. Is she brought it to him and she was excited about it. So he's like, oh yeah, sure, babe, I'll do that. No problem.
Right. To look like a good guy in front for her.
Yeah. Like he's rich and also, to support something that she's interested in. People sometimes will pretend to be interested in things that they aren't just to get a little sex. It happens. It's not the best of human nature, but it happens.
So the story, he kind of, it bookends kind of what we saw at the beginning, where he goes back to his Airstream. He's drawing this story. He's telling the story through his graphic novels. He goes on a run again, and it's soul crushing because he's back where he was at the beginning. So we've been on this journey with him, and he really is no further. In fact, he's worse because we learn early in the film that the money he put in was like an inheritance from his mom. And so now he is actually even worse because he still lives in the Airstream. He doesn't have a job, and he's out the money that he could live on for a while.
It wasn't actually clear what happened to the money from that, but I assume it was the divorce. But he talked about at one point he had a house and then he moved into the Airstream. And so I assume maybe that was part of the divorce. He had to do that.
And so then Carlos, very much like at the beginning, asks to meet him at a coffee shop. And he says, let's do it again. I think, is that when we find out that Kyle doesn't have the restaurant that he worked at the beginning?
Yeah, that might be that time period, right?
For some reason, Kyle doesn't own the restaurant that he worked at.
Because it went out of business.
And so Carlos says, we know we did it once, we can do it again. And so let's buy the restaurant that we both worked at the beginning and make that go.
Except Bobby has no money.
I know, but maybe they could get a small business loan from the SBA.
Yeah.
I don't know. So we know we have a smoochie, yes?
Smoochy, smoochy, smoochy. We do have a smoochie. It's at 1 hour, 1 minute, and 55 seconds. Bobby kisses Tanya, after she gives him a ride back to his Airstream. And I think that was
right before.
Right before the boom chicka bow wow.
Yep. And do we have any head trauma?
I do not have any head trauma listed, nor do I recall any head trauma involved.
It's interesting because it feels like with a bowling alley,
It's right there.
Like you could even have near the end, Al takes one to the head because he's such a sleaze, right? And it would be such
People
a payoff.
falling, the slip and fall gag at a bowling alley.
Yeah.
It's right
Interesting. Okay, what about a driving review?
So there was a silver C7 Corvette driven by Mario, and there's a burnout in the parking lot, which actually makes sense. You have a Corvette like that, you're going to do some burnouts. But it wasn't that actor. They hired someone by the name of Derek DeBoer to do the burnout. No relation to our former neighbor.
Right. I was going to say, we know some DeBoers.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see. Shall we go to the numbers?
Let's go to the numbers.
I mean, they're a little different than our normal numbers because it's a very small indie film. Although I can tell you the budget was a little bit less than $1 million. It is an hour and 48 minutes. It's rated R. It's a comedy. We paused it 2 times. One to talk about how Mike recognized the actor James Le Gros, and once so Mike could read a sign. It made $42,000, which is pretty good considering its opening weekend was
in the middle of the wildfires.
At the beginning of the pandemic.
Right.
It got a 5.4 out of 10, which I am disappointed by, but
it's a little stingy.
That's IMDb, and we have a long history of not liking their ratings. Rotten Tomatoes gave it 82%, and the audience gave it 80%, and I think that's much more accurate.
That is accurate.
It's totally, I started to say a B movie, but then I was like, no, not that kind of B.
No Jerry Seinfeld?
No, I meant, like a B movie is always like a...
Like lower budget.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in that sense.
Well, but it's not
budget.
campy. It's not where you can see the zipper in the back of the alien's costume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a sweet little movie, and I just love that it was made here in Oregon, and you got some pretty good names.
Right.
Lisa Edelstein and Diedrich Bader, and to be here in Oregon making films, I don't know. I love this movie. I highly suggest it. It's a fun little movie. So for next week, you guys, this is what we're going to do. We are going to talk about the films that we made. We're ending our month of films made in Oregon, and we just thought we have so many wonderful friends that have supported us, friends and family that have supported us in this film, when we made our films. And we just thought maybe it would be fun to talk about kind of maybe some of the behind the scenes or whatever. So in the show notes of this film for Phoenix, Oregon, I will put the link to my 2017 film, A New Promise. It was my very first film. It was kind of my capstone. I did it as a senior in college as part of an assignment. And then we're going to also put the link to see on Vimeo the film we made in 2020 here at our home during a pandemic, where we built an elevator in our garage and we made a movie. And that one has done really, really well in festivals. And a lot of you have said great things about it, but not everyone's gotten to see it because we were in the festival run, and festivals like to be the first one to show it. And luckily, we are pretty much done with that festival run. And so we can release it. So we're going to put that in the show notes. You can also email me at christy@dodgemediaproductions.com if you want the link to the film, but so that you can prepare for next week's episode. And we still don't know if it's going to be 1 episode or 2. It might be 1 episode and a bonus. We don't know how long we're going to talk about our films. So I guess if it's any indication how long I've been talking so far. So anyway, there you go. That's what you can do. Tell your friends, share it out. So never forget.
Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.
Thanks for listening to Dodge Movie Podcast with Christy and Mike Dodge of Dodge Media Productions. To find out more about this podcast and what we do, go to dodgemediaproductions.com. Subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tell us what we should watch next. Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.